Namaskar everyone. I am Ravi Gupta. I am CEO and founder of Elects Technomedia Private Limited, and I'm editor-in-chief of a magazine called Digital Learning, which is focusing on ICT-based innovations in education. We have been bringing out this magazine for last 16 years, and we have been working on spreading the ideas of innovation in education. So I welcome all the panelists on this esteemed panel. May I request Prabhakar, if you can mute each of the speakers so that we can speak. Yeah. And the topic of this webinar is COVID-19, paradigm shift in education sector and role of technology for continued learning. And we have an esteemed panel from across several states, and we have the leaders of the higher education institutions with us, and also we have a technology expert, Mr. Raghav Gupta from Coursera. So I will request each of the panelists to please give a brief intro about yourself and your institution to start with, so that all our audience have a context about your organization. And just to inform that we are right now joined by around 340 people already on Zoom, and we have thousands of people who will be watching us on the Facebook right now live. So requesting to start with Dr. Sayali Gankar, to please introduce yourself and your organization. Thank you.
Yeah, very good afternoon to all of you. I'm Dr. Sayali Gankar, working as Vice Chancellor with D.Y. Patil University, Ambi in Pune. I have a background of more than 30 years of experience in academics, especially in academics, teaching, learning, training, and consultancy. Not only that, my interest areas are more of certain subjects. One is the strategic management and entrepreneurship development, along with organizational behavior. So right now I'm working with D.Y. Patil University, which is in Pune, and heading as a Vice Chancellor, where we are running various courses and programs, especially architecture, engineering, management, pharmacy, polytechnic, and agricultural colleges. And at the same time, School of Design also. So these are the programs which are working very effectively in Pune. The organization is very old, which has a reputation of more than 4 decades, having more than the 10,000 students studying in campuses. And that is what our background is. This has been started by Honorable Padma Shri D.Y. Patil sir, and his son, who is leading this organization, is Dr. Vijay Patil, who is President and Chancellor of this university. So thank you so much, Ravi Gupta ji, for giving me such opportunity to interact with all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sayali. We are honored to have you here on the panel.
Thank you.
May I request Dr. Evan Patel from Parul University to please introduce about yourself and your organization. So.
Good afternoon to one and all. Namaskar. I am Dr. M.N. Patel, Provost, Vice Chancellor of Parul University, Vadodara. Prior to that, I was Vice Chancellor of Gujarat University, one of the oldest and big university of the state, and officiating Vice Chancellor of Gujarat Technological University. As so far Parul University is concerned, it is 5-year-old, but as so far the trust is concerned, it is since 1993. As so far the number of faculties are concerned, except dental and education, we have almost all faculty. We have a medicine, we have Ayurvedic, we have homeopathy, we have engineering, we have a polytechnic, we have agriculture, we have science, arts, commerce, design, architect, and everything. As so far number of students are concerned, in a campus, we have about more than 25,000 students. Out of that, more than 10,000 students are staying in the campus. Campus itself is a big of 160 acres of land. As so far foreign nation students are concerned, we have about more than 1,200 students from more than 50 countries, and they are registered for the different courses. As so far digitalization is concerned, we are very much inclined from beginning of that and using that, but due to this time, we have accelerated it with all respects. So my best wishes to all those who are joining and hearing me, and you have given me chance to speak in this good forum. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Patel. We are honored to have you here. Great history of Parul University. Thank you. May I request Professor Dr. Naveen Sheth to kindly introduce yourself and your university, please.
Namaskar.
Yes, sir.
I am Dr. Naveen Sheth. I am the Vice Chancellor of Gujarat Technological University. It is the state university established by the government of Gujarat, and it is the largest university in the state of Gujarat, which having the affiliation of more than 450 colleges, and the students enrollment about 5 lakh students. All engineering, all pharmacy, management, architect, and the diploma, they are affiliated with my university. My university having under the government ranking, it is the last year we have the first rank in 2019. As far as myself was I am the professor of the pharmacy, and at present I am the chairman of the Education Regulation Committee of the Pharmacy Council of India and the member of All India Council of Technical Education. Thank you very much, all India. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Naveen Sheth. Thanks for joining us here. We are honored to have you here. Thank you so much. May I request Raghav Gupta, MD of Coursera, to please introduce yourself.
Good afternoon. My name is Raghav Gupta. I'm the Managing Director of Coursera in India and Asia Pacific. While you see the Himalayas behind me, I'm based in Gurgaon. That's where I live. That's where Coursera is headquartered in India. Coursera is the world's largest online education platform, headquartered in California in the US. And Coursera has partnerships with 170 of the world's top universities, and also 30 leading companies who create content on our platform. And especially in a time like this when campuses are currently closed, we want to support what campuses are doing and how students are impacted. And I'd love to share some of the thoughts of what we are trying to do and what we are learning as a part of the last 1 month, 1.5 months as we progress this panel. But back to you, Dr. Ravi.
Fantastic. Thanks, Raghav, for joining us here. May I request Bharat Agrawal to please introduce yourself.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Bharat Agrawal. I'm the president of the Vishwadharma Group based out of Pune. We are a group having institutes affiliated to the University of Pune. The flagship institute is by the name Vishwadharma Institute of Technology, also called as VIT Pune. We have another engineering college by the name Vishwadharma Institute of Information Technology, VIIT. Both the institutes are autonomous and are ranked in the top 200 colleges of the country by NIRF. We also have our own private university by the name Vishwadharma University, started 3 years back, having the schools of engineering, management, humanities, pharmacy, architecture, and so on. In total, about 25,000 students study with us, right from kindergarten education up to PhD education. It's an honor to be on this panel. Thank you.
Thank you, Bharat. Thanks for being here. We are honored to have you here. May I request Dr. Rajan Saxena to please introduce yourself.
Rajan Saxena. And just before the COVID began, as there was a countrywide lockdown, I stepped down from the Vice Chancellor position after completing 2 terms at NMIMS. NMIMS, in short, but in a longer form, is the Rashtriya Monji Institute of Management Studies, which is the deemed university in Mumbai. NMIMS is today a Tier 1 university in India, the Tier 1 status that has been awarded to us by the Government of India, based on our national accreditation which is A plus, with a score of about 2.59, and also because of our rankings in the NIRF, etc. From all that kind of a point of view, NMIMS today is a tier 1 university. And the university today, it has 16 schools, practically, and it is a multidisciplinary university. Our management school today is among the top 10 schools according to the various media rankings, etc. Our BBA program is considered or is ranked as number 1 by India Today, and our economics school is ranked among the top 50, and is about 34 by India Today. We have programs in liberal arts, design, agriculture, mathematics, engineering, pharmaceutical sciences, biological sciences, architecture, etc. So as I said, we are truly a multidisciplinary university, and not only so, we are also a multi-campus institution that represents Bangalore, beside Mumbai, Bangalore, Hyderabad, Indore, and Mumbai. The one which is upcoming is in Chandigarh. Well, we have today a very large faculty group of about 750, many of whom have come. About my own background, I have also been a former director. I'm also a former director of IIM Indore. I have had almost about 48 years of academic experience in India and outside India, having taught in various universities outside and also in India, in the IIM Calcutta, for that matter, XLRI and Delhi University, or SPG itself. Well, that's my background. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Rajan Saxena, and I will request you to a bit of adjust your mic. There is an audio issue there. And now we move to the first question in the panel, the first discussion point. This is around the COVID-19 situation. The question is around that coronavirus has affected educational systems worldwide. There is a paradigm shift in the education sector. What are the challenges for universities? Please share your initial comments on it. I will request each of the panelists to just speak about 2 minutes each on the initial comments. So I'm requesting Dr. Sayali Gankar to please start. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. I think the COVID-19 has created a great impact on all of us, especially you're not allowed to move out and you need to be there at home. But then when it comes to the education sector or industry, and especially the universities like like us, I think that the challenge was how to deliver the academics, especially complete the courses, at the same time ensure that the students are engaged in very outcome-based activities. That was the major challenge which was really, which came to us. One was teaching, second is how we are going to assess them, and at the same time, how we are going to complete the syllabuses or the academic portions which are required to be done. When it comes to the different faculties, I think every faculty, I'm talking about the education faculty, especially like engineering, pharmacy, wherein the lot of technical inputs are required. So that became a major challenge for all the universities to deliver the outcome or the academic syllabuses, and that was the major challenge. Second was how faculties are going to deliver this, because the delivering classes in classroom is a very a traditional way, is very easy thing, but then use of blended learning process became very tough, and preparation for that is also a mindset. We can say that it's a major challenge. The campuses, both the campuses or all our campuses are equipped with the digitalization. At the same time, various certification programs, right? The faculties are also ready. But then I'm going to talk on that also, that what kind of faculty preparation is required when we are conducting the sessions remotely. So these were the main challenges, because the books and ebooks and the platforms are available, but then how you will make students learn actually, I think that was the major challenge. But then within a week or the 2 weeks of time, faculty and students, they geared up, they understood the changes, they started dealing with this uncertainty and the challenges which arised. So that was the main thing. But then now I think everyone, the student and faculties, all of are now used with the technology using, and now they are delivering the programs very effectively. Yeah, but still there are few challenges which we would like to discuss maybe in the next moment. Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sally. May I request Dr. Aman Patel to please speak on the challenges?
Sorry.
So, Dr. Patel.
Now,
Yeah.
can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
The COVID-19 coronavirus global pandemic is creating a global learning crisis in addition to a global health crisis. Researchers suggest that 80% of the world learners are no longer in traditional schooling or colleges. Due to this reason, online learning plays a major role in education sector for helping the student to study remotely and help solving the present crisis due to COVID-19. We have been talking about the virtual classrooms, and virtual online tools today allow us to make the engagement between the teachers and student as close to a real in classroom type experience as possible. Going forward, this tool can also make the teachers and parents meeting as well as the staff management meeting more time and cost saving while providing the necessary interactivity. In our Parul University, we have taken initiative of various digital technologies such as Google Classroom, which is used for streamlining the process of sharing the files among the teachers and students. Student can be invited to join a class through a private code or can be invited through the Gmail domain to join into the Google Classroom, and along with that, it aims to create an assignment by the teachers and for grading of assignment in paperless way. Moreover, for the students, teacher can easily create a test quiz and also it can assess. In short, the Viva Voice and the problem solving conducted using Zoom, Google Hangout applications. As far as the examination is concerned, it will be conducted by WAC, that is a World Assessment Council platform. And this is nothing but providing the digitalization in academics. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Patel. May I request Professor Naveen Sheth to please respond on the challenges?
COVID-19, and this March and April is the month, particularly for the examination, completing of the syllabus, then the admission and everything. So this is the major challenge, and this uncertainty is still continue. So the whole infrastructure is not ready to have an online exam and everything, because the government colleges, they don't have any facility. Their students are coming from remote places. So it is difficult to conduct the exam online for all the students. So this is the major challenge to be faced at present, in my opinion, by the university. Yeah.
Sure. Thank you, Dr. Naveen. May I request Bharat Agrawal to please respond on the challenges?
Digitization, implementation of digital education has been a process for maybe a couple of years plus within our systems. Students were always ready to welcome it. This COVID-19 situation has only fast forwarded what we were calling about or talking about the future of education to today's reality. As rightfully mentioned earlier, the basic challenge is how do you complete syllabus through rightful engagement of students, understanding that they are learning and not only a mechanical learning this or mechanical delivery of lectures is going on. So the challenges of online delivery are addressed. Most of the teachers have risen to the occasion, and students, I'm sure, were already ready to accept this new form of education. The current challenge lies around assessment and also around teamwork. In engineering education, especially, many projects are team-oriented projects, and much of the assignments are also team-oriented assignments. So I don't think we have able to experience a success out of how do you assess teamwork and how do you in fact make students team up digitally and undertake project work. So these are current challenges which are yet to be addressed. Thank you.
Thank you. May I request Dr. Rajan Saxena to kindly respond on the challenges. Please switch on your audio. Yeah.
Well, Dr. Gupta, I was listening to all the panelists, and quite clearly, I think the most significant challenge to my mind has been that of
Sir, your audio is not clear. Like, please be near the mic.
Am I clear now?
Yes, yes.
Am I clear now?
Yes, yes.
All right. So what I'm saying that the most important challenge to my mind, which all the colleagues have just mentioned, all fellow panelists have just mentioned, related to the completion of the semester per se. Whether how to really complete the semester, because everybody has got disrupted. The whole academic process has got disrupted. The most interesting aspect, in my mind, has been that universities are really are trying to cope up with the help of the technology extensively. What is happening on the student learning experience, that is something that we are going to be talking about in steps. But that is one part. But I'm now going to be looking at it from the point of view of what are the kind of challenges that are there in front of us now. In the first place is the fact that the student numbers are now going to get severely impacted across the universities itself because of the simple reason that the mobility of the students is likely to get affected. I don't think that the students who are there in different states would still like to travel all the way to different parts of the country to take a degree or to study, even when it is being offered by one of the top schools, etc. So the numbers are going to get affected. What numbers will be? It's anybody's guess. So the student mobility is affected to a very large extent. Second is the fact that when we talk about technology today, I think the biggest kind of an issue is that of the faculty's competences today. Ability to handle an online learning session. It isn't just merely standing before a camera and lecturing, but it is actually what is it that you are doing to make the whole learning more and more interesting. In fact, a Bloomberg study of the American students indicated that the students who were unwilling to pay the price for the spring semester and the same as that they would have done otherwise, because the online learning experience did not be so positive, primarily because of the fact that the teachers saw it as yet another kind of a mode of delivering the lecture. I think that is a fundamental kind of a difference. That's the kind of a major challenge that we have. Transforming the education. But third, to my mind, pressure at the result of all this coming over. If I look at it, I believe that these challenges, the most significant opportunity that all of us have, because obviously all challenges offer us an opportunity. It isn't just maybe seen as a point of view from a negative point of view. There's an opportunity for all of us. And the opportunity is in terms of how do we transform the learning experience and how do we augment the learning.
Great, sir. Thank you. May I request Raghu Gupta to please respond on the challenges?
Absolutely, Dr. Ravi. So I'd like to talk about this from two perspectives. One is the immediate short-term challenge, but I think also it's worthwhile to think about a medium to a longer-term challenge as well, because I think the challenge is not just the current lockdown, but the impact of coronavirus on society is going to stay for the next few years. And I think we should be thinking about how to kind of take up that challenge right away as well. In the short term, what all of us are experiencing in the country, close to 37 million students, or about 3.7 crore students, are currently sitting at home. It's a massive number, like any thing to do with India would be. And close to 1,000 universities, 50,000 colleges are currently closed. And the number, of course, is very, very big globally, because UNESCO says that about 1.6 billion students globally are currently sitting at home. All of us on this panel know this, and the audience knows this very well, that the impact on disruption in education is not just in the short term, but these 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 months of implication can mean what students learn and what kind of careers they get eventually. And so in the short term, what we are seeing, and like a lot of the panelists said as well, is many institutions are transferring learning online by conducting live lectures. And the feedback that we are collecting is that the student experience is mixed. Some faculty members who are able to do this well are able to engage students. And my daughter gives me a lot of feedback. She's in class 9 and she's taking a lot of classes on Zoom. And, many students find that it is highly disengaging, to be able to be on these lectures, where to interact with 30, 40, 50 students for faculty members is hard. Second, from a Coursera perspective, Coursera fairly early in March decided that we want to be able to help what's happening around the world. And Coursera and all the 200 institutions that create content on Coursera took a call that to be able to support what's happening in higher education, we've made our Coursera for Campus platform free for all universities and colleges around the world. And this is a platform which can be used by universities and colleges to deliver for-credit learning for students, not just any learning, but actually deliver for-credit learning to students. And so far, from around the world, we've received close to 30,000 requests. Within India, we've received about 10,000 requests. And as of yesterday, about 2,000 programs for colleges and universities across the country had been made live. And close to about 4.5 lakh students are already now benefiting from some of what we've launched. These free licenses are available till the end of July. So hopefully we will go through a lot of the period where the lockdown is happening, and we want to be able to do that. And we've launched something similar for the business sector, the government sector as well. I think that's the immediate term, that's the short term. I think there's merit in maybe taking a minute on the longer term as well. And I was looking at this report that McKinsey had put out in 2018. And all of us know that technology is significantly changing how the working world functions. And at that point in time, McKinsey had said that automation is going to have a very large impact on jobs, and low-skilled jobs are at the risk of automation. And they had said this in 2018. They've come out with another report in April 2020 to kind of study the impact of COVID-19. And this came out earlier this month, April 2020. And they've said that low-skilled jobs will be hit hardest by COVID-19 as well. And in this category are jobs in the food services space, so hospitality and restaurants and places like that. It is jobs in arts and entertainment. It is jobs in accommodation, retail, real estate, and topics like that. And these are industries which we may see significant impact in jobs in the next 1 to 3 years. And I think from a longer term perspective, for those educational institutions which have students in these domains, I think there is a thinking to be done as to what needs to be done to be prepared for the impact that we're going to see on the job world. And I just want to kind of bring that perspective into this conversation as well.
Sure. Thanks, Raghav, for highlighting that some jobs will get impacted. Some types of jobs will emerge as the hot sectors now. So, may I request the panel to respond on the next questions, and I will. The question is around how COVID-19 has dramatically reshaped global higher education. So, I will request to start with Dr. Naveen Seth to respond on this one.
Yeah. So there are about 157 crores students in 191 countries across the globe affected by this pandemic COVID-19. So there is a sudden change. The data by one of the e-learning platform, edX, that only 3% students are online using online resources and e-learning. After this March 24, in India, there is a traffic is 1000% traffic is increased in this online learning. Means all the colleges and all the institutes, universities, now they go on for the different platforms available. Either it is a Google Classroom or a meeting or whichever may be the free and paid services available. They are most of the colleges and schools are using it. So actually they reshape totally the education system worldwide. So I think that is the major changes globally by this COVID-19. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Dr. Naveen. May I request Dr. Sally Hingalkar to please respond on this?
Yeah, if you look at it, right, because the kind of challenges which we were talking about, one is not only in the teaching, learning, but then the infrastructure which we are talking about, right? The students, those who are in remote areas, getting them the facilities, right, is becoming very difficult. Even faculties, right now, if you look at it, the faculties are ready to invest their time in developing all those courses and delivering those with the blend of learning kind of technology. But then the infrastructure is really poor in our country, especially when the students have gone back home. They are not having that kind of bandwidth where they can see, they can interact, or even they can do the certification programs which are available. So one of this big challenge, how we are going to really cope up with the infrastructure. Though our campuses are very well equipped, right? We have libraries, we have e-learnings, we have the digital boards, we have the imparters, ERPs, all those are in place. But then when working in a remote area and dealing with the uncertainty is a new thing which all the universities are required to address with. So this is what I feel very important. And second is that how our systems are going to contribute in this. Because when we talk about assessment, the rigorous assessment, when we say that becoming a quality education, what we can say that doing the quality education based activities, for that the systems are not that equipped which can do the rigorous assessment of the student, right? Faculties are able to be trained in setting up the contextual learning. That is what we always try to do it. So how are they going to work in this kind of situation where again we are more used with the traditional and a blend of the technology. So I think the new areas which really need to address very effectively, because more than 60 million students are really suffering across, and the students are again the McKinsey report, and when we talk about Bloomberg's reports, right? Students have their own questions. They are willing to learn, but then this particular challenge of infrastructure has created a major hindrance in learning process and even at the teaching process. Yeah. So the faculties and students really need to take care of this, not only in the campuses, but off the campus, how we're going to deliver. I think that is what we need to work on. How we can have the partnership with the agencies like Coursera and MOOCs, how they can become a partner with us. I think that is what we need to work on. So that will help us to really ensure our academic rigorous processes, and at the same time assessment also. Of course, placement is a major challenge that I'm sure after some time we'll discuss on that also. Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. May I request Mr. Bharat to please respond on this?
Well, the COVID has definitely reshaped the global education system, primarily because it has stopped mobility of students. Everyone has come back home, and everyone is stuck home. We all understand, of course, the importance of classroom-based teaching learning, and we all very firmly believe that that is the most effective way of delivering knowledge or transferring knowledge to students. But then there is, we all also know that the importance of peer learning is very, very big. And because of all of us doing online courses and learning from teachers online, I think we are all our students are going to miss this crucial component of peer learning from each other, and also learning will become more serious. Or I would say, because of this this crisis, learning has become more serious. It is only a teacher and a student who are conversing with each other, and the fun part of learning, which involves a classroom of whatever 20 to 70 students, and interacting with each other, sharing with each other, and having fun with each other is lost. I think this socialization part, which is why the universities were created. We are meant for socializing. We are meant for mass gatherings. So these components of the teaching learning systems are lost, and I think as we speak about the crisis, I think the education system has become far more serious and far more, I would say, monologistic than ever before. And I really feel our students are missing the experience of being that campus.
Yes. Well said, Mr. Bharat. I think that now due to the online education, the education has become a very, very serious and focused activity. May I request Dr. M.N. Patel to please respond on this?
Yes, sir. As it is spoke by the various panelists regarding our limitations. As so far, some students are at remote places, connectivity, bandwidth, network, a lot of problems are there. But as we know that the situation has arisen, we should have to find out some of the solution. No doubt, since our regulatory authority, they are towards telling about the digital learning, and some of the things which we are knowing that students should opt at least up to 20% of digital learning through some MOOCs or some NPTEL or some whatever resources, and university should give the credit to them. So our mindset first we have to change, because this situation is no doubt it is a compulsion for us. So how we have to find out? We are always innovative, and obviously we have to find out some of the solution of that. And in beginning, always it is very difficult to accept that we are very habitual with chalk and talk system, just talking with the blackboard and talking with the student. But now this digital form is to my opinion, is very good as so far. It is taken directly by the student, so more effectiveness will come. Otherwise, nowadays, my observation in this 45 year of service, that classroom attendance of student is a big headache, especially even in engineering. So to put or to bring the student into class is very, very difficult. In compared to that, when we are talking for digital, student is choosing the subject by himself and learning by himself. Obviously, more seriousness may come in the students, more effectiveness may come. Only part is that teachers have a challenge, because now a lot of information. In old time, teacher was everything. Little bit library was supporting that. But nowadays, in the digital era, in social media era, a lot of informations are available. It became a threat to the teachers. And when the subjects, when students themselves are choosing, I think they are doing well, better, and we can find out the alternative of that. एक हिंदी में मुहावरा है, ऐसे में बात करूं कि विपत्ति आए न वलखिए, विपत्ति वलखने से न जाए, विपत्ति पड़े तो उद्यम कीजिए, उद्यम से विपत्ति टले. तो ये हमारी एक विपत्ति जैसा कुछ आया है, तो उसको हमें ऐसा सॉल्यूशन निकालना है. नो डाउट ये पैराडिगम शिफ्ट आने वाला है, एक्सेप्टेबिलिटी आने वाली है, एंड वी आर इनोवेटिव एंड वी कैन फाइंड आउट सम सॉल्यूशन. so that we can satisfy the teacher and we can change the present system of education. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Patel. May I request Dr. Rajan Saxena to respond on this question?
Dr. Ravi Gupta, I quite what was just mentioned about it from the point of view of the infrastructure gap, let us say, evaluation part of it, assessment part of it. I quite understand. I mean, this is really those kinds of challenges that all of us face. And let me just, I mean, the good question is about the global education, as I understood, and how the global education system is now getting disrupted. What the kind of challenges that are there. I think it is just as it is in the case of India. The global education also today, almost all the universities today, are faced with the problem of the foreign students not being able to come into their own countries. So the student mobility has definitely got impacted. Also, while in a similar way, we are also finding that the student, even domestically, even in the, let's say, even in the American universities or any of the universities in the West, even there, domestically, at this point in time, the mobility has been affected. So now the question that is coming up is that how do you really reach out to the student community? That is the biggest question that is there. The student community, which is now today the global student community for any of the international universities that we talk about. So it is with that kind of a perspective, sometime back, Harvard Business School created absolutely an online MBA program. They realized that there are challenges that they have in terms of just maybe a face-to-face kind of a program and the cohort size as a result of that. They realized that, well, it is time that they need to be with the student almost any time that the student wants to learn. And from that kind of perspective, this online MBA program got created. Then the online MBA program of Harvard is 1/5 the price of the regular MBA program. And therefore, it is a great kind of a value proposition of the Harvard itself. Secondly, when I start looking at it, even from the point of view of an assessment, I know the panelists mentioned, I think certainly assessment is a very big part. But what is more important is to look at that what is the meaning of an assessment? Is the purpose, or what is the purpose of assessment? Is the purpose of assessment giving us feedback? In which case, today there are companies that have been able to create an online testing mechanism. Coursera has a similar kind of an online testing mechanism because we have a relationship with Coursera. We are one of those who have been able to take a couple of courses in our engineering program, etc. But the more important thing is for every question there is an analytic that is available. And that is available to the student. How the student has really done with the rest of the group itself, or whether the rest of the other questions. So the issue is that of looking at it from the point of view of how do we further now go forward in terms of transforming this education at a global level itself. As I said, it's an education opportunity. To my mind, there's another part that I look at it. The technology today is just a facilitator. It is a facilitator. Education, opportunity, and the learning experience is the core. That is so, then quite clearly we are saying we need to look at the various aspects of the learning and the various dimensions of the education program itself. Let me just put it across, just the last part of mine, and then I'll stop. That in terms of looking at it from the point of view of even proctoring, because many a time this question has come up in an online examination, that you do not know whether the student is being able to, whether the student has really done his work honestly and sincerely, whether there was any unfair means. Virtual proctoring algorithms are available. Virtual proctoring software are available. the entire screen. And consequently, today we need to look at all these kinds of, I would say, the kind of new technologies which are now available to us to make the online learning experience or the learning experience better. That's the way.
So, thank you, Dr. Rajan. I think your audio still has some issues. I will request you to address it. And I will request Mr. Raghav to talk about what are the possible alternatives for the interrupted education which we are facing right now.
Yeah, I think like has been said in some of our discussions on the panel, in the short term, while we are undergoing the lockdown, in some form or the manner, 100% of education is currently being done online, whether that be via Zoom classes, whether that be done by platforms like Coursera. But I think it's worthwhile thinking about what should be the shape of things to come once we get out of the lockdown. Again, thinking about the medium term to the short term. And our expectation is that just given the sheer increase in adoption of online that is happening right now, and a lot of people are able to then go and take courses and see the kind of value some of these high quality online courses are able to bring to them, it is quite likely that once things start to get out of the lockdown, we will see a situation where maybe 70-80% of learning will go back to being on campus and 20 to 30% may continue to be online. And I think the operative word that we will find will be blended, where it's a blending of on-campus plus online education. To Dr. Saxena's point, where student mobility may go down, we may actually also be in a situation where institutions may say some students will be in class while some students will be online, because that can be a blended mechanism as well. And in order to be able to set up the learning ecosystem that this 20-30% of online needs to enable, I believe there are 4 groups of technologies that institutions need to look at. The first is what I would call real-time communication tools, so Zoom, Google Class, Hangouts, and so on and so forth. So just having a very robust mechanism of real-time communication tools. The second would be online learning platforms like Coursera, where a full course, along with assessments, along with peer-to-peer interaction, can be delivered online. The third group is an LMS, a robust learning management system that can manage a lot of what is being delivered online. And the fourth group, which I think the panel has spoken about a little bit, is platforms for assessments and plagiarism controls. And if institutions start thinking about bringing these 4 groups of technologies together on their at their institution, then I think they can set up for a world where we will probably see 20 to 30% education continue to be online, while the balance 70-80% may go back to campus. Our experience has been that students, when they take courses on Coursera, the feedback is very good. They enjoy the quality of the education. They do miss being in a class, and what Bharat spoke about, the social element of learning, of course, that they miss, but they do enjoy the quality of education that they're getting. And they're also very happy with the strength of the credential that they're getting, because it's coming from a top university like Yale or Michigan or Stanford or what have you. I think the area where we need to drive change management is with faculty. Faculty tends to look at online education as being a threat to them. And I think that's where we need to facilitate a mindset shift with faculty to say, this is actually a resource which is available to you. This is a resource where, like a textbook is a resource which is available to you, where you don't write the textbook that you recommend to your students. This is also a resource which is available to you, because together, along with online and the expertise that faculty brings to the class, we can up-level the quality of education that we can bring to the students. And I think that's probably a good way to think about this.
Fantastic. Thank you, Mr. Raghav, for highlighting that we can look at the online courses as a resource, not as a threat. The another question which I have is that, will the older faculty adopt technology, and how to train them? So may I request Dr. Naveen to respond, please?
Yeah. So definitely this older teachers, generally they are very familiar with the chalk and talk system. But this particular pandemic situation forced all the teachers to go online teaching. And really, most of the colleges, even in my about 450 colleges, all colleges now using all these e-learning platforms, and the teachers, they never use all such platforms, but now they are using. No doubt, capacity building of the teachers, some teachers are required, but in general, either a old faculty or a young faculty, now they are with the friendly with the online tools and other things. So I think there is no problem, and it will be a initial stage. One has to use all this platform, because the situation may be continue for 1 or 2 months also. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you. May I request Dr. Sally to please respond on this?
I think if you look at currently the panel which is here as a mixed age group, right? Right from Dr. Rajendra Saxena to Naveen Sheth and Patel. So time has come, so wherein everyone has to learn technology now. And thank you to all these technology people, those who have created a very friendly user kind of technology, which anyone can come and can understand it. The challenge with all of us, old faculty, new faculty, young faculty, is that how are we going to really take care of online learning with the blended learning process in terms of what? Most of the time, I'm going through the various sessions which are conducted by faculty members or YouTubes which are available, right? If I look at Coursera, the content, the assessment, right? Can faculty really develop a learning pedagogy which bring these kind of inputs in class, right? Because right now what has happened that we have an habit of conducting classes in contextual process. We create a context. We ask them to read and come in class, right? And we navigate the class and we try to impart that particular concept to the student. We also need to understand we have 3 categories of the students in class. One is A, B, and C. Same will happen on industry 4.0, or now we should also say that education 4.0, right? So here we need to understand that the student who is not able to contribute, how I'll make him contribute in the discussion process, right? So can they learn appreciative inquiry, right? Can they, or we can say that can they will be able to prepare a class to come with a mindset, right? Or a preparation where they can contribute, right? So I think the diverse group, which is one of the plus point of a class, is miss out when we conduct the classes like this, and especially in terms of infrastructure. Again, I'm coming back to this because what I am saying, maybe a person is not able to hear it who is listening from there. So I think that we need to understand. We need to focus more on collective ability, right? Learning process, right? Not only that, the collaboration part of it. How are you going to bring the collaboration? It doesn't mean that only asking the question. So can I create the content? Most of the faculty members, we really get stressed when it becomes to write a case study or to prepare ourselves to conduct the theory class, the theoretical class, the class. So I'm talking in terms of content development, how they are going to do it. I think that is very important. And we need to also understand that online learning is not a library of video lectures and ebooks, right? We start sharing those things. I think that we need to really work on, including old and new faculty member. We need to understand a new way of pedagogy, and that is the science, learning science of this technology or a digital pedagogy, which is required to be understood very well. We also need to understand that we can say that the only an old way of learning is not now a tool or a mechanic or a formula to develop the student. I have again a question, and again I'm more worried about the students who work in laboratories, those who work on science and technology. How are we going to address that issue? I'm not worried about the the Western countries, because their digital process are totally different. But then how, as a higher education, the India would like to work on that. So how are we going to develop these new technologies which will help to teach through the teachers? And then of course, the industry 4, we are talking about artificial intelligence and all. So how are we going to develop the models which will be a deep learning models? I think we need to develop the certain plans and methods. I think that is again one more area which is very important for faculties. So here old faculty can come to help to develop the content, and the juniors can deliver it very effectively. We need to understand that the learning science is not only technology. So we have to also work on psychology, behavioral analytics, right? Content deliveries, assessments. So we have to develop these new, evolve these new systems. And I think I'm very, I'm always follow the Coursera, and I almost from last 7-8 years, I have asked my faculty members to get certified on Coursera so that they will learn this, the technology, that how the contents are developed, how the contents are they delivered, and at the same time, how do they do the assessment? So can we really follow this kind of method as a leader from this particular the area? Not only that, I think we also need to more focus on the strengthening the conceptual processes in our classrooms. We need to understand the conceptual through bringing the situation, practical situations now. Now this is one of the biggest challenge for all the faculty members. How are we going to bring these, the real life or the practical situations which the student face in the at work life, right? So maybe in profession, at workplaces. I think we need to really work on these areas. Not only that, I think that's why I'm saying that the science of digital learning is one of the new faculty development program we have to really design with the help of Coursera. Can design, they can ask at least 1 or 2 faculties from respective branches to learn and deliver those effectively, because student learning, at the end of the day, we are trying to figure it out that how we will make student to learn those things and apply it at the real life, especially in case of science and technology. I think that we need to address. I'm also worried about the faculties, especially the assessment. Again, I'm coming back to the assessment. Now I can see that there are many questions which have been, they are asking that my thesis is completed, PhD, right? I would like to go for that. So what is the mechanism? So we're not talking about the students who are in campus, but the off campus, the students which are working, how are we going to do the really address those issues? I think these are the questions which are again there. After this panel discussion, we need to think on that. The government has to play a major role in this process, that how we are waiting for their guidelines, UGC and AICTE, that how we will make these people to learn, the faculties, and at the same time our students. This is what
Fantastic.
my contribution on.
Wonderful comments. Dr. Ravi, could I just add
Yes,
something
yes,
to what
now
Dr.
there's
Ravi
the
said?
whole faculty.
Yes.
Yeah.
Please, Raghav.
Yeah. So, and I say this firstly on a lighter note, and if we think about this webinar, and Dr. Ravi, I don't know if you see, there've been 500 500 audience members who started with us, and 476 are still online. So attendance seems to be okay. And I don't know if you get so many questions and comments in your in-person webinars, of course, on a lighter note. Dr. Sally, to your point about blended, I'll just quickly double click on that, what we are learning as we're working with educational institutions. And this is at a high level. It obviously needs a deeper level of discussion. But we see the educational institutions, and Dr. Saksena's institution is doing this already for the last 1 year. They think about using online in 3 ways, specifically using Coursera in 3 ways. The first is a 4-credit standalone course. So this would typically be a course which is currently not being taught on campus. And the intent would be take a Coursera course and just make it available as a standalone course. Typically, this might be an emerging technology, let's say like Internet of Things, right? And what NMIMS does is NMIMS says to get an engineering degree, you need 160 credits. But if you want a BTech honors, you need to get 180 credits. And those 20 additional credits will be emerging technologies that will be given to you online. So there is a 4-credit standalone piece to this. The second element is a 4-credit blended piece, where a faculty member may say, I'm teaching marketing in class, but the digital marketing piece, I want you to take from Wharton on Coursera. And then I will do an assessment of what I taught you in class on marketing and what you learned on digital marketing together at the end of the class. Or the faculty member may say, again in an MBA class, that before you come to advanced strategy, take this prerequisite course online and then come to class. So there might be various models of, either a prerequisite course or running the course in parallel on a subset of what the particular class is teaching. And the third thing that we're currently seeing universities do is extend the learning to multidisciplinary. So should an engineering student also be studying data science because that's where the world is going to? Or should, a commerce student also study data science, because if the commerce student wants to go and work in accounting or finance, then having data analytics skills is extremely important. And so the third bucket would possibly be multidisciplinary learning. So those are probably the three main ways to probably think about blended learning. But I'll keep it brief, but this merits a deeper discussion, but I'll leave it at that for now.
Great, Raghu. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Sayali, for raising very important questions and giving me a lot of ideas, which are very interesting. I will request now Mr. Bharat to respond on the challenges the educational institutions will face post COVID-19 scenario.
Foremost, let us pray and let us hope that this crisis ends at the earliest and we all become normal and the world becomes normal, healthy, safe and hearty. But even though it is declared it is good, I'm sure campuses would be the most severely impacted to reopen after the crisis is supposedly getting over. So what is, according to me, the number one priority for all campuses is safety and hygiene of the students. So we are, as I mentioned earlier, we are places meant for mass gatherings. Our existence is that we gather students with other people together and they all study together. Unfortunately, COVID is just anti what we are meant for. So we would foremost have to ensure that the campus is clean, hygienic, and all the practices that are required to prevent the spread of the virus are implemented on campus with a very, very high level of severity. Even the campus starts, you have done all the sanitization and other cleaning aspects. You still have to maintain distancing challenges, at least for some time till maybe the entire globe decides that this is not required, which might be a year or 2 years down the line. So maintaining the same preventive measures of the COVID spread on campus is a challenge because we are not designed for that. Our classrooms are designed for 40 to 80 students, and now you will have to have only 20 students in a classroom if you have to maintain those distancing standards. So that will be a challenge that we have to address. And here comes the blended model of teaching and learning, where maybe all the theory goes online and lab work comes on campus, all the teamwork happens on campus, the fun work happens on campus, and theory remains online, are the models that we have been discussing for the last 1 month and sure of implementing. Another challenge is of engagement of students, because I'm not sure how much student mobility will happen, at least for the next academic year. So diversity of the student group is also an important component when it comes to peer learning. If we have only our city students coming to us and other city students not coming because of this challenge of the crisis of the COVID disease, we will be teaching the homogeneous group, which will have some small marginal impact on the learning quotient of the students. But leaving that apart, I believe health and hygiene of campus and maintaining the campus COVID-free is a primary challenge that we all have to think and address.
Good points, Mr. Bharat. May I request Dr. Evan Patel to respond on the post-COVID challenges?
As I said earlier, that one has to change naturally. Whatever the situation arises, definitely force us to learn more. And as we know that change is an eternal process, one has to create their mind in such a way that they can do best of that. No doubt this so-called COVID-19, how long it will run, we don't know. But by this, we learn a lot from that. And alternatives we have also to find out. And as a lot of things are said by Dr. Raghav regarding the blended learning against e-learning, like Google Classroom, Zoom, and other. And some of the doubts that Madam Siali also raised regarding that how to conduct the skill-based examination or a practical-oriented examination. But I think time always will learn or say us that we can find out some of the solution. So to my opinion, SurveyMonkey is a tool that allows you to launch any kind of online survey project, be it for the purpose of market research, a quick poll, competitive analysis, or consumer or the employee feedback. This is easy to use. The platform allow you to take the survey according to your defined target audience, which is free of cost. Moreover, in our university, teachers and students are taking naturally the MOOCs courses, ePathshala, NPTEL, Coursera, Swayam online courses for learning in new technology, which helps in a career growth. All these steps will help strengthen the country's digital learning infrastructure. In long run, COVID-19 has only accelerated the adoption of technology to deliver the education. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Patel. May I request Dr. Rajan Saxena to please respond on the post-COVID challenges.
Am I audible in the first place?
You need to speak a bit louder because your audio is a bit low.
Just 1 minute. Let me just see. Is it better?
Yes, it's better. Yeah.
Now?
But yeah.
Is it good?
But please speak louder always. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I would tend to echo what about the few minutes back, the kind of things that I mentioned. I think one of the most important challenges that all campuses would have.
We can't listen to you, Dr. Rajan. Please keep the mic near you, near your face. Yeah.
Can we better?
Yes. Yes.
Well, I'm saying that what Mr. Agarwal was just mentioning, that the most important kind of a challenge that the campuses will have is that of how do you make the campuses safe and also hygienic, because the most important thing would now be everybody's safety on the campus itself. But the more important part, and that very rightly said, was the whole challenge of infrastructure utilization. Huge infrastructure has been built by the universities. Now, given this kind of a fact of where the social distancing is now going to be a new norm, it's a new paradigm. And now they're right in front of us. What is going to be happening now? Let's look at our classrooms. Let's look at our other kind of a common areas. How are we going to be utilizing them? What we can do over there? And also, we got to look at it from the point of view of the diversity. Another interesting aspect of this post-COVID scenario, especially when we look at it from the point of view of now the blended learning and the technology coming in a very big way, is
So
possible.
So the audio is an issue. Please keep the mic near you, near your mouth.
I'm saying, is it clear?
Yeah.
Is it better?
Yes. Yes.
All right.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
What I'm saying that the most important kind of a challenge now that we are going to be having is that of the faculty to student ratio. Consistently, we were talking about 60 students, we're talking about 1:10 or 1:15 ratio. Today, with the technology, it is possible for you to read. The size of the class is not really such an important part. Now, how do you make the whole learning experience, and I'm again coming back to this, how do you make the learning more and more effective in such a kind of a method, but in such a kind of a process itself? How do you keep the student engaged? lot of strategies that various institutions are going to be looking at. One was just mentioned to you by Raghav, how we have really done it at LMIMS in our engineering program and in our management program, the way we are now looking forward. Another is obviously to look at it from the point of view of, using a whole lot of analytics that is now coming up. For example, today, right now, there are so many questions and answers that are coming in. I mean, questions coming in, and there's so much of a chat that is currently going on this. And you can run a simultaneous AI analytics, trying to know which are the kind of questions that are most commonly being asked. Not only being asked, but also to whom it is being asked. And to what an extent the kind of a response mechanisms that we. To my mind, when I look at it completely from the point of view of the challenge that we have today, there are three kinds of challenges to us. One is in terms of how do we make the infrastructure safe? How do we utilize the infrastructure? And secondly, how do we define the learning horizons itself? And the third part of it is how do we continue to talk about from the point of view of the diversity, but more importantly now, what is it that we need to do to see that the learning is effective when, let's say, the faculty is going to be addressing a much larger kind of a class size than what typically one is.
Thank you, Dr. Rajan. May I request Raghav to please talk about how online learning has changed the education sector?
Yeah, Dr. Ravi, I think we've covered a number of points along those lines. Maybe
Yes.
what we do in the interest of time, I know there is a question about internet bandwidth that has been on that panel quite a bit. Maybe I can take that first.
Okay.
And I think the question has been that for remote students, for students with low bandwidth, how should they be accessing online classes? And I would say there are three parts to this again. The highest bandwidth is required when a student is invited to a live class, to a Zoom lecture or to some kind of a live class. And if the student does not have high quality bandwidth, that will be a problem. The next level of bandwidth that is required is if it's an asynchronous class or a pre-recorded class. So let's say they're coming and watching a class on YouTube, the bandwidth required is much lesser. And even on Coursera, the bandwidth required is not that high. And also like platforms like Netflix, where you can download the video for offline viewing on the Coursera app, that's doable as well. And as long as even in remote locations, what students can do is put the course to be downloaded, and over the course of time, the whole course gets downloaded and then they can view it offline. I don't think we have a solution yet for those locations where internet is not available, but I would imagine, companies like all the telecom operators in the country are probably working on that. But at least personally, I don't know of an answer to that just yet. But I think that's a good way to think about bandwidth issues.
So we have covered almost like 1 hour 15 minutes in a panel, and there are lots of questions in the Q&A, around like 67 of them. So if you suggest we can go for the Q&A, and we could request each of the speakers to pick up the questions like they want to address, or we should proceed with our other questions which we have already planned. So
yeah, happy to take questions on the Q&A window or the chat window, Dr. Ravi, as you would like to.
Is it okay, Dr. Gankar? We can straight away go for Q&A.
Yes, we can go for the straight. Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Right? So I will be requesting Dr. Gankar to start with you. If you can look at the Q&A, and we have just 15 minutes more for the panel. So each of us can take 2-3 minutes each and respond to 1 or 2 burning questions. That's it.
Okay.
Right?
I think these questions are really interesting, which are to be addressed by all the panels, because many of them have asked a typical question that are these certification programs will be counted as a credit, or how will they get that? This is one question I can see that. Second, so I definitely, as I've said, that post COVID, when the university will be fully functional, I'm sure the all universities vice chancellors and chancellors will call immediately a meeting to have a new system development approach with the flexibility, right? And then program design, assessment, where we can really think about adding those platforms, especially Coursera, MOOCs, right? So that the student can get the certification and at the same time can get the credit, right? And at the same, even the faculty also can be considered for one of API, what we say that, right? API assessment can be also done for the faculty members. So I think this can be done very effectively. Yeah. So I think this is the question which is to be answered. I think Bharat Agrawal sir or Rajan Saxena, I think all of you can answer this. They're asking about the credits to be given for.
Yes, very important.
Very important one. Yes.
Raga, would you like to share this?
I'll defer to you, Dr. Saxena, to answer this one.
I think this is to be answered by us because we are the policy makers and developing the system.
Okay. All right. So what we did, I'll share with you what we have done. What we did was to look at the courses and the credits that are coming in from Coursera, and therefore we evaluated those credits from the point of view of NMIMS. Whether they were really equivalent to the full course or they were equivalent to a half a course. And if there was any kind of a gap that was there, then to that extent, that gap was attempted to be built in by a whole lot of other assignments and other kind of projects that were built into it, so that the credit requirement of the university was complete. This comes in that this was a cross board, whether this was an honors program or it was, let us say, patching up in the management program itself, or using another kind of a hybrid model that was there. Wherever we were talked about it from the point. More significant is that when we are looking at the credits coming in from an online course, then we have to now do that. The time has come when we talk about Education 4.0, and you referred to that. I think Education 4.0 is where the student is right at the center, and the student is empowered to really pick up the credits from anywhere in the world. And it should be possible for the student to come over to the university and say, these are the number of credits that I have done from these universities. The university evaluates that for the purposes of an award of a degree, and if found completely in line with what the university was wanting them to complete, the university then awards them that kind of a degree. That does not mean that the university itself will, the awarding university will not offer those credits. The awarding university would also require the student to take a minimum number of credits from that university itself. So as a consequence of it, what is going to be happening, that the student, Education 4.0 is in a position to acquire the credits from the sources or from the universities that are today delivering those kinds of courses which are at the cutting edge, especially when we talk about it from the point of view of the emerging technologies and from the emerging disciplines. That's where I look at it.
Addressing the same question, and then I have summed up another question. But first, when we talk about credits of other courses to be incorporated, as a policy, we had Vishwakarma have established an association with a few courses, with a few companies who are offering these courses. I would not say them companies, but organizations. One of them is Harvard Business School Online. So we have a formal MOU with them, wherein if a student does a course of HBS online, credit would be given to a course. And there are other such associations with other companies as well. I picked up another question, which I am seeing at least repeated 10 times. Dr. Ravi?
Yeah.
Yeah, I see admissions as a
okay. In addition to this, what Bharat Agrawal sir has said, is that yes, the universities are not only thinking about giving a typical program, but we are thinking about giving the interdisciplinary and transdisciplinary programs, right? So when we are working on these kind of models, then such kind of certification programs, we are required to look into it. We need to partner with them the way we have partnered with Harvard Business or now with the Coursera. These programs definitely add a value to the students' credentials when they appear for the final interviews or maybe the placement. I think this is very important. So definitely all the universities are thinking on these lines, right? That having this flexibility and giving the credits to such kind of the certifications. So thank you so much. I just wanted to complete on 2 points, transdisciplinary and interdisciplinary. This is the new thing which is coming in, which we need to have the broaden the views and then the understanding about having the flexibility in the systems. Thank you so much. Thank you. Yes,
Thank
sir. You please continue with
Bharat,
the next question.
yeah.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
Bharatji, please.
I see a lot of questions as I read, I scroll through the Q&A about admissions and how are admissions going to happen in the next academic year. Obviously, I can speak on behalf of Vishwakarma and our group. I think we are already prepared to see to it that the entire process, I mean to say the administrative process of admission is totally digitized, which means once a student gets his 12th grade, and in many cases with us, the JEE grade and the CET grades, he has to online fill up the form. The entire process is done through a software system, and the student right up to payment of fees and allotment of a class is done online. He need not visit the college office at all. I'm sure many other university schools that I know in my network are also ramping up their digital infrastructure to suit an entirely digitized admission process, wherein the student comes to campus only for only to start learning.
Okay, all these websites, if you look at it, those are completely updated with the technology backup. So you'll have virtual tours, you will have the online application forms, you can have a chat, you can have a bot, which is already answering the questions and queries of the students. So admission, as rightly said by the Bharat Agrawal sir, is that definitely students have a complete comfort. They can come and visit and talk to the faculty members also.
May I request, Raghav?
I think we covered 2 questions which are specific to Coursera. So there was a question earlier about how can we match our curriculum to Coursera courses. And 3 weeks ago, we've launched, and I'll share the link in the chat, but 3 weeks ago, we launched a tool which we call Coursera Match, Course Match. And what a university can do, and I'll share the link, like I said, is come in, enter a CSV file with the description of their curriculum on the Coursera website. It will match that to the Coursera course, give a relevancy score to say this is a 100% match or an 80% match or a 50% match. And this can be done within a couple of days. So I'll share that link. If you have a question about how to match your curriculum to a Coursera course, it can be done using machine learning on our website. And the second question was about what I spoke about, which is Coursera's response to the coronavirus initiative, where we've made licenses available for free till the end of July. There's a link that, again, I can share in the chat window. And an institution needs to sign up. Students individually cannot sign up, but I can share that. And if somebody from the institution signs up, we can, I think, go live within 3 days' time. And that is very doable as well.
May I request Professor Naveen to respond to some of the questions?
Yeah, there is one question, but that is particularly related with my university. So I think it is not an open question. That is for whenever exam will be conducted from a pharmacy students. So I think this is not the platform to be here. Definitely, as per the UGC committee, follow the action and we will follow the recommendation of the committee, and as per we will conduct the exam. Pedagogical changes are required because some old conventional state universities, they have very airtight rules, regulations, and other things. Now the situation is still, it is uncertainty. So the credit transfer from the Swayam or a Pathshala or from a MOOC courses or from a Coursera, and the mapping is already described by one of our panelists. So the credit transfer is major thing, about 20-30% it is to be given to such type of the online courses and online platform. And definitely, suppose in the initial period, if there is still September, there will not be any classes, then during this time they can use all this platform. So, and for that, some universities, particularly the state university, they required the pedagogical changes, even to promote the innovation and startup. Some weightage to be given there. Those who are working in the innovation and startup, those credit to be also given to them. So that type of the pedagogical changes are required.
Fantastic.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Naveen. May I request Dr. Patel to please respond to some of the questions, please?
So I've gone through some of the questions. Some of them are answered. One basic question is regarding this credit transfer. Now it is a high time that students should not be taught the typical content which we describe. Whatever the talent in student is, it is to be taken care, and university should so flexible to accept the credit in order to award the degree. And for that, we have to change our mindset. And one another thing, to my opinion, that it is a threat to the teacher. Teacher should also be taught the lesson of ethics and values, so that the system can be put in a proper way. Otherwise, this old system which we have continued since it is given by the Britisher, we have to be out of that. Especially nowadays, our most challenging part is not the teaching. We can manage the teaching by various way of digital learning. But main is the examination and credit of examination, assessment of examination. So like that way, it is a time that students should go on online on-demand examination instead of a fixed set of exams. As in when he prepared for a particular subject, he can inform and universities should conduct the exam and credit can be. So like that way, if we became little flexible, that we have to be flexible, because now it is going to be the time where we have to make a change. So I think a lot of new thing also I've learned from various panelists. So my best wishes to Elets and for giving me the chance in this forum. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Patel. May I request Dr. Rajan Saxena to please respond to a few of the questions?
Well, there'll be a question on which are the typical kind of courses that would, lend themselves to the online kind of learning. For example, somebody was talking about the liberal arts or some of those other experimentation kind of courses that are there, skill development courses, for example. I think we need to understand that it's not that every course or every program would lend itself to the online learning. There are a whole lot of our programs which will require experiments, which will require workshops, for which obviously the online learning is not the best. And that's where the hybrid model really comes in. The same thing happens in the context of the skill building. While a lot of engineering courses, some of the engineering courses can be offered in an online mode, I believe that so far as the skill part of it is concerned, in that the cognitive part can be developed through the online learning, online kind of programs. The skill part of it can really be developed through a hybrid model itself, where the students actually get the assignment of take the problem into the class, and then.
Sir, the audio is gone, sir. Audio.
Better?
Yeah.
Better?
Please speak louder, please.
Okay, is it better? Is it better?
No.
Better?
Yeah.
All right. What I'm saying that, well, the hybrid model helps in terms of skill building. It's not that all courses would lend themselves to the. But as we were talking about it, many of the, let's say, liberal arts or for that, simply because of the fact that it requires a lot of people doing work by their own hand. In the context of liberal arts, as we all know, it's a question of how do you really learn the art of building up a narrative, building up an argument, and building up a point of view based on multiple disciplines itself, based on your understanding of the various disciplines itself. It is from that kind of a point of view, I believe, that we need to consider a hybrid model.
So, I think, thank you, Dr. Rajan. May I request Raghav to please give concluding remarks and also talk about the public-private education partnership, which was a point we had to discuss, but we haven't discussed due to the shortage of time. But
Dr. Ravi, can I suggest? Unfortunately, I have a hard stop.
Okay.
Wrap up. I know we're a little over time.
Yes. I think we are delayed anyway. So if you all agree, we can stop here. And I would like to thank all the panelists here and great huge. And I would like to thank all the audience for joining in here. And I will request all the audience that this video is available live on the Facebook. You can please like and share it. It is on our digital learning page on Facebook. And I think the great discussions can be spread to a lot more people so that lot more people are benefited by this interaction. So I thank again Dr. Sahali ji, Dr. Naveen, Bharat ji, Dr. Rajan Saxena, Raghav, Dr. Aman Patel for joining in this amazing discussions. Thank you so much. Namaskar.
Namaskar.
Thank you. Namaskar.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much.